The mysterious signal. For centuries, humanity had been forgotten by the galaxy. Their ships, once powerful and respected, were now relics of a past long gone. The Galactic Council ruled over the galaxy, with their fleets dominating space. But deep in the void of space, something stirred. Something old, something powerful. In the heart of the Galactic Empire, on a massive space station called Citadel Alpha, the Galactic Intelligence Division was busy as usual, monitoring the movements of distant planets and keeping an eye on any unusual activity. But today was different. One of their sensors picked up something that they couldn't explain. A strange signal, unlike any they had ever detected before, echoed through the communication channels. The signal was coming from deep within a part of space that had been uncharted for centuries. It was a frequency unlike any used by the Empire. Even more unsettling was the message's content. It wasn't an ordinary transmission. It had a distinct pattern, a message hidden within the noise. Attention all personnel. We've detected a new signal, originating from Quadrant Z7. It's coming from a source that shouldn't exist. The chief analyst, Zaranur, called out to his team, his voice trembling. He was always calm, collected, but this was different. There was something unsettling about the signal. He stared at the screen, unsure of what to make of it. The signal appeared to have no origin from any known species or system. His team was puzzled. They spent hours trying to trace its exact source, but it seemed as if the signal was coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. A vast area of space that, according to every map, was empty. Could it be an error? A malfunction in the system? Asked one of the younger analysts, shaking his head in confusion. No, Zaranur responded sharply. This is real. And it's coming from somewhere. Someone out there is sending this message. The news spread quickly across Citadel Alpha. Soon, every officer and general in the Empire was hearing about the mysterious signal. There was one question on everyone's mind. What was this signal? Who was sending it? And why had they waited so long to send it? As the signal continued, the council leaders gathered in their war room. The most powerful beings in the galaxy, the leaders of the Galactic Empire, now focused all their attention on the unknown message. Grand Admiral Thaler, a towering figure with a reputation for ruthless leadership, stood in front of the holo-table. He examined the data on the screen, his mind racing. How long has this signal been active? Thaler asked, his voice low. Approximately 20 hours, Admiral, answered Zaranur. But it's been growing in strength. Whoever is behind this knows exactly what they're doing. This is no accident. The room fell silent as the leaders absorbed the implications. A signal coming from an unknown source deep in the galaxy. An area considered to be completely void of life or activity. Could only mean one thing. Someone had returned. But who? The only ones with ships capable of this kind of technology were the ancient humans who had mysteriously vanished thousands of years ago. The Galactic Council had long since written off humanity as a threat. The Empire's records showed no traces of human activity in centuries. And yet, here was this message, as if it were calling them out of the silence of space. The possibility of humans returning, with the power to create such a signal, sent a ripple of fear through the room. We need to find the source of this signal. Now, Grand Admiral Thaler commanded. Prepare the fleet. We're going to investigate this anomaly, and we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. The leaders of the Empire were cautious. Humanity had always been considered primitive compared to the other species in the galaxy. They were thought to have disappeared long ago, lost in time. Yet the signal suggested something far more dangerous, something the Empire couldn't afford to ignore. In the silence that followed, one of the junior officers spoke up. His voice was nervous but determined. Admiral, could this be a trap? A trap by the humans to lure us into an ambush? Thaler turned to him, his face expressionless. We're not taking any chances. We'll send a scout ship first to confirm the signal's origin. Then we'll deploy a full fleet if necessary. The decision was made quickly. The Empire's finest fleet would head to Quadrant Z7, the area from which the signal originated. The Admiral knew that whatever was waiting for them out there, they had to be prepared for the unexpected. As the massive Imperial warships powered up, ready for their journey into the unknown, Zarenor looked back at the signal source one last time. It pulsed on his screen, brighter and stronger with each passing second. The unknown caller seemed to be waiting, as if anticipating their arrival. "Who are you?" Zarenor whispered to himself. He felt the weight of the question hang in the air. Could humanity really have returned? And if so, what did they want? Deep in the cold expanse of space, the mystery was unfolding. The signal was only the beginning. Humanity's ultimate weapon, hidden for centuries, was about to awaken. And the galaxy was about to face something far more powerful than it ever imagined. The fleet awakens. The galaxy was quiet. The stars twinkled peacefully in the distance, a stark contrast to the chaos that had suddenly engulfed the galactic empire. The mysterious signal was no longer just an anomaly. It was a call to arms. The fleet was preparing for the journey to Quadrant Z7, where the signal had originated. But even as the massive warships powered up their engines, doubts lingered in the minds of the officers and soldiers aboard. What could they possibly be facing? What had humanity become in the centuries they had been forgotten? Admiral Thaler stood at the front of the command deck of the Imperial flagship, the Dreadfire, staring out into the void. His stern face showed no sign of doubt, but in his heart he felt a strange unease. The Galactic Empire had been the undisputed power of the galaxy for centuries. No species had come close to challenging their rule. And yet, this signal was different. The signal had come from an area where no other life had ever been detected. It had come from the remnants of a species thought long gone. "We'll reach the coordinates in 3 hours," Commander Raylock said, his voice cutting through the silence. "Our sensors are still picking up the signal. It's getting stronger." "Good," Thaler replied, though he knew that their arrival could spark more than just curiosity. The possibility of encountering humans, who had once wielded unimaginable power, was enough to make even the most hardened officers uneasy. "We need to be ready for anything. I want all systems running at full capacity. Keep the fleet on high alert." His orders were quickly obeyed. The vast Imperial fleet of warships, destroyers, and cruisers aligned in formation, their engines' hums filling the void. Their mission was simple: reach the source of the signal and investigate. But none of them could shake the nagging feeling that the humans were not just sending a signal, they were calling for something much bigger. Thousands of light years away, beyond the galactic core, another ship was preparing. The ship was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen before: huge, powerful, and ominous. It had been dormant for centuries, hidden deep within the forgotten corners of space. Now, its engines hummed to life. This was no ordinary ship. It was humanity's last surviving weapon. The Exodus, a colossal warship that had been lost in time. On board the Exodus, humanity's greatest minds were gathered. They had been in stasis for centuries, waiting for the day when they would be called back into action. When the signal first came through, they knew what it meant. It was time. Time for humanity to reclaim its place in the galaxy. Commander Lyra Zane, a hardened leader who had spent her life studying the history of humanity's rise and fall, stood in front of the large holoscreen. "We've been waiting for this moment," she said, her voice commanding the attention of her crew. "For too long, we have remained silent. Now, the galaxy will know that humanity has returned." A cheer erupted from the crew, but Lyra's expression remained serious. She had seen the Empire's power firsthand, and she knew that their return would not be welcomed. But the signal wasn't just a call to action. It was a challenge to the Galactic Empire itself. "We don't know what we'll face when we meet them," Lyra continued, her tone steely. "But we have one thing that they don't: humanity's will. We are the last hope for the galaxy." Her words were met with a resolute silence. Everyone knew the stakes. They had been exiled, forgotten, written off by the very galaxy they had once ruled. But now they were back, with a fleet that was not only capable of taking on the Empire, but of reshaping the galaxy itself. They were humanity's last and greatest weapon. Back aboard the Dreadfire, Admiral Thaler received an urgent update. The signal had intensified, and their destination was now just a few moments away. His eyes narrowed as he reviewed the information. The source was close, but there was something else, something that wasn't quite right. The signal was still coming from that same empty part of space, but now it was surrounded by a strange, almost invisible force field. It was as if the signal was coming from within a shield, blocking all other attempts to scan it further. "Prepare for hyperspace exit," Thaler ordered. "I want full scans as soon as we emerge from the jump. We need to know everything about what we're walking into." The fleet transitioned smoothly into hyperspace, and as they emerged into the void of Quadrant Z7, the scene before them was nothing short of incredible. Floating in the vast emptiness was the Exodus, humanity's forgotten warship, its colossal size dwarfing even the Empire's largest vessels. The Exodus was a sight to behold. Its dark, sleek frame shimmered in the distant light of the stars, its powerful engines now burning brightly. Massive weapons were visible along its hull, but there was no sign of life on the exterior, at least none that the Empire's sensors could detect. The force field surrounding it pulsed faintly, like a living thing, as though it were protecting the ship from detection. Zaranor, still monitoring from the command station, gasped. "Admiral, we're detecting something unusual. The ship is alive. It's as if it's responding to us." Thaler's gaze sharpened. The situation was rapidly slipping out of his control. "How is that possible?" he demanded. "We don't know, sir, but the readings are clear. The ship is active, and it's waiting for us." The tension in the air was palpable. For the first time in many years, the mighty galactic empire found itself facing an unknown enemy, a species they had all but forgotten. And that enemy, humanity, had just awakened. The first encounter. The enormous Exodus hung motionless in the vacuum of space, casting an intimidating shadow over the fleet of the Galactic Empire. Its presence was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. The colossal ship, though seemingly abandoned, now hummed with an undeniable energy. As the Imperial fleet closed in, an eerie silence settled over the command decks. No one moved. No one spoke. They were all too aware of the historic moment that they were witnessing. Admiral Thaler stood at the front of the command deck, his gaze fixed on the massive warship. His heart raced, but his outward demeanor was calm. He had faced countless threats in his long career, but nothing had ever felt like this. The signal had drawn them here, but now that they had found it, Thaler realized the stakes were far higher than he had imagined. "Status report, Commander Rylock," Thaler said, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. "We've established contact with the Exodus," Rylock replied, his fingers dancing over the control panel. "But there's no direct communication. The signal is still present, but we can't penetrate its shields. It's almost as if the ship is waiting for something." Thaler nodded slowly. He knew that their only option was to continue pushing forward. They had come this far, and they could not afford to retreat now. He motioned to the tactical officer. "Prepare for a direct approach. Let's see if we can make contact in person." Outside, the Empire's fleet shifted into formation, with the Dreadfire leading the charge. The other ships followed closely behind, their engines roaring to life. They were about to make history. Aboard the Exodus, Commander Lyra Zane stood at the center of the command room, her mind focused on the task ahead. Her crew had been preparing for this moment for years, but now that it had arrived, Lyra felt the weight of the decision before them. They had sent the signal, but did they know what they were getting themselves into? She turned to her second-in-command, Captain Marcus. "Are we ready?" "Yes, Commander," Marcus replied, his voice tight with anticipation. "The fleet is prepared to move out. All systems are active, and we're receiving a transmission from the Empire's fleet. They're closing in fast. Lyra's heart raced. She had always known that the Empire would come, but now that it was finally happening, she couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. For centuries, humanity had been silent, forgotten by the galaxy. But now, they were about to make their return, unlike any species before them. She turned to the tactical officer. "Are the shields holding?" "They are, Commander. The Exodus is as ready as it will ever be." Lyra nodded, steeling herself. This was their moment. They had to show the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. As the Imperial fleet continued its approach, Theller's eyes were fixed on the massive warship ahead. Suddenly, a soft hum filled the air, and the ship's force field began to flicker. For a moment, nothing happened. The shields shimmered, but the Exodus remained silent. Theller's hand tightened around the arm of his chair. What was happening? Then, without warning, a blast of energy shot out from the Exodus, striking the space around it. The energy wave was immense, powerful enough to rattle the fleet, sending shockwaves through the Empire's ships. Theller's heart skipped a beat as the Dreadfire rocked under the pressure. "Status report," Theller barked. "We're taking fire," Rylock called out. "But the shields are holding." "We're not in danger, sir, but they're showing us their power." "Increase speed. Get us closer. We need to get in range to make contact," Thaler ordered, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. The fleet moved swiftly, its engines roaring to life as the Dreadfire closed the gap between itself and the Exodus. The tension was unbearable. The crew on both sides knew what was at stake. This wasn't just an encounter between two ships. It was the clash of two civilizations. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before. Back on the Exodus, Lyra Zane watched as the Dreadfire and its fleet moved closer. Her heart pounded in her chest. She knew the time had come to act. The humans were back, and it was time to show the galaxy their strength. "Activate the primary weapon systems," she commanded, her voice calm but resolute. "Prepare to fire if necessary." A crew member nodded and began adjusting the weapon systems. Lyra turned to the communication officer. "Send a message to the Empire. Let them know we're ready to talk." The officer nodded and began typing commands into the console. A moment later, the ship's communication systems flared to life, sending a powerful signal across the void. "Message sent, Commander." Lyra's fingers tightened on the console. It was done. Now, all they had to do was wait. The clash of powers. The tension between the two fleets hung heavy in the cold vacuum of space. Both sides were ready, each waiting for the other to make a move. On the Exodus, Commander Lyra Zane stood at the center of the control room, her crew bracing for what was about to unfold. They had made their intentions clear, but now they would have to see if the Galactic Empire was willing to listen, or if they would retaliate. The Dreadfire, leading the Imperial fleet, was positioned directly in front of the Exodus, its dark silhouette against the backdrop of the stars. On board, Admiral Thaler stood silent, watching as his fleet came to a halt. His eyes flickered between the screen displaying the Exodus and his own crew, who waited for his command. "Admiral, we've received a transmission," Commander Rylock said, his voice tight with anticipation. "The message is clear. Humanity has returned, and they're not backing down." Thaler nodded slowly. "Prepare for a response. We will make contact on our terms." His eyes narrowed as he glanced at the Exodus. He had no intention of surrendering. The Empire was far too powerful to be threatened by one ship, regardless of how advanced it was. Back on the Exodus, Lyra Zane felt the weight of the decision upon her. She knew that what was about to happen could determine the future of humanity, and possibly the galaxy itself. She turned to her tactical officer. "Are the weapons systems fully charged?" "Yes, Commander," the officer replied. "The Exodus is fully armed and ready. However, we're still holding fire, awaiting orders." Lyra's hand hovered over the command console. Her instincts told her to be patient, but the looming threat of the Empire kept gnawing at her. She wanted to show them just how powerful humanity had become, but she also knew that escalation would lead to bloodshed. Was the Empire truly ready to face humanity's wrath? Fiddler's voice broke the silence. Open a channel to the Exodus. The ship's communication system buzzed to life, and a moment later, Lyra's calm, resolute voice echoed through the Dreadfire speakers. This is Commander Lyra Zane of the Exodus. You are in the presence of humanity's might. We have returned, and we are no longer the forgotten species you once knew. We demand your respect and your cooperation. Will you listen? The words hung in the air, charged with both defiance and a challenge. It was clear. Humanity was not afraid. Fiddler's face hardened. You demand our respect. He stood tall, his voice commanding. We are the Galactic Empire. We are the ones who decide who deserves respect. You will surrender your ship immediately, or we will be forced to act. Lyra didn't flinch. We're not here to surrender. We're here to take what's ours. The galaxy will soon know that humanity is no longer weak. You've made a grave mistake underestimating us. Feller's eyes blazed with fury. You will regret this. The Empire does not bow to threats. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of deep breaths as both commanders prepared for the inevitable. Neither side was willing to back down. In the void between the two ships, the tension was palpable. A single wrong move could send the galaxy spiraling into war. The Exodus and the Dreadfire were locked in a deadly standoff, each vessel poised to strike. Humanity's future, as well as the fate of the Galactic Empire, hung in the balance. Prepare to fire, Lyra ordered, her voice steady despite the rising tension. We'll show them that humanity is no longer to be underestimated. The massive guns on the Exodus began to hum with power as they charged up. The energy from the ship's core flowed into the weapon systems, and soon the ship's deadly armament was fully powered. The crew of the Exodus braced themselves for what was to come. On the Dreadfire, Thaler's hand hovered over the command panel. He had made his threats, but he knew deep down that the Exodus was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. The sheer size and firepower of the ship were unimaginable. And the message had been clear. Humanity had returned, and they weren't backing down. All ships, prepare for battle. Fiddler barked. This is no longer a negotiation. The Dreadfire's engines roared to life as it shifted into battle formation. The Empire's ships surrounded the Exodus, preparing to attack. But Lyra wasn't intimidated. Humanity had the advantage now. The Exodus's weapons charge, ready to unleash their fury. Fire at will, Lyra commanded, her voice echoing through the ship. The energy cannons of the Exodus fired in a single devastating blast. The beam shot across the void, cutting through space like a knife. It struck the Dreadfire, and the shockwave of the blast rippled through the Imperial fleet. The Empire's ships reeled from the impact, their shields flickering as they absorbed the powerful strike. The Dreadfire was shaken but remained intact. Thaler's heart raced, but he knew the fight was just beginning. Return fire, Thaler shouted, his fists clenched in determination. The Empire's ships opened fire, and beams of energy shot toward the Exodus. But humanity was ready. The Exodus's shields flared as they absorbed the incoming fire. The ship groaned, but it held strong. It was the beginning of the battle. The clash of powers had begun, and both sides were determined to prove their strength. As the battle raged, Lyra's thoughts were clear. She had made her move, and humanity had shown the galaxy their strength. But this fight was just the beginning. The Empire would not back down easily. Humanity had returned, but they would need to prove themselves over and over again. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The unexpected alliance. The battle was relentless. Energy blasts from both the Exodus and the Imperial fleet lit up the space between them like a chaotic storm. The Dreadfire unleashed wave after wave of fire, but the Exodus stood resilient, its shields flickering with each impact, but holding strong. Humanity had shown the Empire its power, but now it was time for a different strategy. Lyra Zane, the commander of the Exodus, knew that they could not simply destroy the Empire's entire fleet. The goal wasn't just to win the battle. It was to send a message. Status report. Lyra's voice rang out in the control room, sharp and commanding. Tactical readout showing that the Dreadfire has sustained significant damage, but they're still operational, her tactical officer, Lieutenant Marcus, replied. We've held them back, but if we don't find a way to end this, the fight could go on for days. Lyra frowned, her mind racing. A prolonged battle wasn't ideal. She needed a way to resolve this quickly. Humanity had made its presence known, but could it make the Galactic Empire understand that there was no going back? Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Commander, we're receiving an encrypted transmission, Marcus said, his voice puzzled. Lyra raised an eyebrow. From who? It's from the Imperial Fleet, he answered. It's a direct line to Admiral Thaler. Lyra's stomach tightened. Why would Thaler contact them now, in the middle of the fight? Put it through, she ordered. A moment later, the screen flickered to life. Admiral Thaler's stern face appeared on the monitor. His expression was grim, but not without respect. He studied Lyra for a moment before speaking. Commander Zane, he began, his voice firm yet measured. This fight has gone on long enough. The Empire has no interest in exterminating humanity, but we cannot allow you to challenge our rule. What is it that you want from us? Lyra stood silent for a moment. The Empire was a powerful force, but humanity had proven its worth in this conflict. It was time for the next step. We want peace, she said calmly, her voice unwavering. We want recognition. We are not here to conquer, but to stand as equals. Humanity will not bow to your empire, but we are willing to work together if you can find the strength to listen. Thaler seemed taken aback by her response. He glanced down at the tactical displays for a moment, as if weighing his options. Finally, he looked back at Lyra. Peace? You expect us to accept this so easily? Thaler's voice was skeptical. You just destroyed half of our fleet. Your fleet attacked us first, Lyra retorted. But you're right. We can't go back and change the past. But we can shape the future. The galaxy is changing. It's not just your empire that holds power now. Humanity has risen, and we're not going anywhere. The transmission paused, and the silence stretched between them. Then, Thaler spoke again, his voice lower. I didn't expect you to be so resolute. You're right about one thing. The galaxy is changing. I'm not sure if I'm ready to accept a new power like humanity, but perhaps it's time for us to reconsider. Lyra's eyes narrowed. This was the opening they needed. What are you suggesting, Admiral? She asked. Thaler leaned forward, his tone serious. I'm suggesting an alliance, not an unconditional surrender, but an agreement. We'll withdraw our forces, and in exchange, we will open negotiations. But understand this, our terms will be strict. The Empire will not be ruled by any race. Humanity must prove it can coexist with us, not challenge us. The room fell silent as Lyra absorbed his words. An alliance was not the immediate victory she had imagined, but it was a victory nonetheless. It was a chance for humanity to be recognized, not as subordinates, but as equals. Lyra took a deep breath, then nodded. Understood, Admiral. We'll stand down for now, but the future is on the line. Humanity's role in the galaxy will not be dictated by anyone, empire or otherwise. Thaler's expression softened just slightly, a glimmer of respect showing in his eyes. Very well, I'll initiate the ceasefire, but mark my words, Commander, this will not be the end of the conflict. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. The screen flickered as the transmission ended, leaving Lyra and her crew to process the weight of what had just transpired. On the Dreadfire, Admiral Thaler sat back in his chair, still contemplating the words he had exchanged with Lyra. He had given humanity a chance, But would they be able to live up to their promises? Could they truly coexist with the Galactic Empire? The ceasefire order went through, and the Imperial fleet began to fall back, though not without a final, lingering tension in the air. Feller had not fully embraced the idea of peace with humanity, but he understood the need for a new approach. The galaxy was changing, and if the Empire wanted to remain a dominant force, it would need to adapt. Back on the Exodus, Commander Lyra Zane stood on the bridge, her eyes watching the retreating ships of the Imperial fleet. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. An alliance had been forged, albeit a fragile one. The path forward would be uncertain, but humanity had proven that it was capable of holding its own. Lyra knew that their future would depend on how well they navigated the complex dynamics of the galaxy. But one thing was certain: humanity was no longer a mere player in the galaxy's grand stage. They had been exiled, forgotten, and underestimated. But now, they had a seat at the table. The Exodus powered down its weapon systems, and the crew exhaled a collective sigh of relief. The battle was over, for now. But as Lyra Zane looked out toward the vast expanse of space, she knew the true test was just beginning. The price of peace. The Exodus floated in the quiet of space, the distant stars seeming distant once again. The Imperial fleet had retreated, its vast warships disappearing into the void. The ceasefire had held, but the tension was palpable. Lyra Zane paced across the bridge, her mind not fully at ease despite the temporary peace. "We've won the battle, but the war is far from over," she murmured to herself, staring out into the endless black of space. She had led humanity to its first significant victory against the Galactic Empire. But now the real challenge began: the negotiation table. The Empire might have agreed to a ceasefire, but it was clear from their terms that this wasn't an act of goodwill. Feller had made it clear: the Empire would not be ruled by any race. Humanity would have to prove its worth. Lyra had spent years fighting for humanity's survival in the shadow of the Empire's dominance. Now she had a chance to turn the tide, but at what cost? Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus, approached her cautiously. "Commander, the Council is awaiting your report," he said. Lyra nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll be there shortly." The command center on the Exodus was a busy place, filled with officers working tirelessly to maintain communication with other fleets and civilian ships across human space. Lyra stepped into the war room, where her closest advisors and the highest-ranking officials in humanity's military were gathered. The weight of the moment pressed down on them all. "Commander." Admiral Laris greeted her with a nod, his voice heavy with the gravity of the situation. "We've reviewed the terms from Admiral Feller. It's clear this ceasefire is just the beginning of something much larger." Lyra sat down at the center of the table, her fingers tapping lightly on the surface. "Yes, we're standing at the crossroads of a new era for humanity. The Empire will not easily accept us as equals. We must be ready for whatever they throw our way." "Agreed," Admiral Laris said, his expression serious. "But we must also remember that this is a significant shift in power. For the first time in centuries, we're not the underdogs. The Empire knows that." Lyra looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each officer. The reality of their position was both thrilling and terrifying. They had earned this moment, but the Empire's history of ruthless expansion was not one to ignore. "Do we trust Feller?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence. "Can we truly believe that the Empire will honor their word? That they'll open negotiations in good faith?" Admiral Laris hesitated. "I think Feller may genuinely be trying to avoid further bloodshed, but the Empire is vast. There are forces within it that may not be so eager for peace." Lyra's gaze hardened. "And that's why we'll be ready for anything. We'll negotiate, yes, but we'll also continue to build. Humanity will never again be caught unprepared." Meanwhile, aboard the Dreadfire, Admiral Thaler sat in his private quarters, the weight of the last few days settling upon him. His hands rested on the table, fingers laced together, as he reviewed the report from his fleet. The humans had been more formidable than he had expected. Their warship, the Exodus, had withstood the full force of the Empire's fleet. The human commander, Lyra Zane, had proven herself to be a force to be reckoned with. But the ceasefire wasn't a victory for him. It was a concession. The Empire was not used to giving ground, especially to a race it had once considered inferior. Thaler knew that peace wouldn't be easy, and it was only a matter of time before the more militant factions within the Empire would demand a return to their old ways. But for now, he had to deal with the reality that humanity had earned a place in the galaxy. He had to face the uncomfortable truth. The Empire could not control every aspect of the galaxy forever. Thaler leaned back in his chair, his mind working through the implications of this new order. What would the Empire demand in return for peace? And more importantly, would humanity remain united, or would this fragile alliance collapse under the weight of its own ambitions? Back on the Exodus, Lyra sat in her quarters, staring at a map of the galaxy. The vast expanse of stars seemed more like an opportunity than an obstacle now. Humanity had made its first significant move on the galactic stage. They had proven their strength, their resilience, and their capacity for alliance. But the question remained, what would humanity do next? Would they be able to handle the complexities of galactic diplomacy, or would they fall prey to the same corruption and power struggles that had doomed so many before them? Lyra's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden chime. Her screen flickered to life, revealing an incoming transmission from the Empire. She straightened in her chair, ready to face whatever came next. The tipping point. The air was thick with tension aboard the Exodus as Lyra Zane stared at the holographic message before her. The transmission from the Galactic Empire was incoming, and she could feel the weight of its significance. It wasn't just another diplomatic call, it was a challenge. A turning point in humanity's fight for its place in the galaxy. "Commander, the transmission is ready," Marcus said quietly from his console, his eyes flickering between the screen and the captain. "Shall I patch it through?" Lyra took a deep breath. "Do it." The lights in the command center dimmed slightly as the screen flickered, and an image of Admiral Thaler appeared. His expression was as unreadable as always, but the subtle tension around his eyes told a different story. He wasn't just making an offer for peace, he was preparing for something more. "Commander Zane," Thaler's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "We have both witnessed the raw power humanity has displayed. But I hope you understand that the Empire doesn't bow easily. The terms of this ceasefire were necessary. But peace is a fleeting concept in this galaxy. It takes strength to secure it." Lyra kept her eyes locked on the screen, refusing to show any weakness. "And what do you suggest now, Admiral? Is this another test of strength, or are you ready to discuss true peace?" Thaler's eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time, Lyra saw a flicker of doubt in his expression. "Peace, yes, but peace under our terms. The Empire demands respect. Humanity will be a part of the galaxy, but under our watchful eye." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She had expected this, but the reality of it still stung. The Empire's arrogance knew no bounds, and their demands would not be easy to swallow. "That is not how peace works," Lyra said, her voice firm. "Humanity will not be a subject. We will be an equal. If you can't understand that, then we will not have peace." There was a long pause, and Lyra could see Thaler's mind working, processing her words. The silence stretched on, filling the room with a sense of impending danger. Then, finally, Thaler spoke. "Very well," he said, his tone sharper now. "The Empire is willing to make certain compromises. But let it be known, Commander, this is the last time we will extend such an offer. Humanity has earned its place, but how you handle this moment will decide your future in the galaxy." With that, the transmission cut off, leaving the command center in a tense silence. Lyra slowly exhaled. "Prepare for the next steps," she said quietly to Marcus. "We've earned a seat at the table, but now we must fight for our place." As the transmission ended, Lyra walked away from the console, deep in thought. She had known that the Empire's demands would be difficult to navigate, but the weight of the decision was now upon her shoulders. She could feel the eyes of the entire human race on her, on them. This wasn't just about one ship or one battle. This was about the future of humanity. And she would not let humanity fall into the hands of the Empire. Meanwhile, back aboard the Dreadfire, Admiral Thaler sat back in his command chair, the holoscreen before him flashing with reports and data. The Empire had made its move, but there was something troubling in the air. The humans had shown a strength unlike anything he had ever expected. Their warship, the Exodus, had proven its worth beyond measure. And now they were not simply negotiating. They were demanding respect. But Thaler had seen this before. Empires rose and fell. He had once believed the Empire's dominance to be eternal. But humanity had shattered that illusion. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered, his voice firm and resolute. "We will stand by our terms, but we will also stand ready for any response from the humans. The next few days will be crucial." On the Exodus, the crew was busy at work, preparing for whatever might come next. Lyra walked the halls, speaking with her officers, ensuring everyone was ready for the challenges ahead. The Exodus was more than just a warship. It was a symbol of humanity's rise, and she would not allow it to fall. The battle for peace was far from over. Every decision from here on out would have far-reaching consequences. Humanity had earned its place, but now the real fight began, not with weapons, but with diplomacy, with strength, and with resolve. The universe had watched as humanity made its move, and now it would watch again as humanity decided its future.